The wind howled across the barren plains of Montana as dusk fell over the Carter ranch. The horizon burned orange before, surrendering to the bruised blue of night. Inside the creaking barn, lit only by a flickering lantern, stood Luke Carter, a rugged rancher with a past that hung on him heavier than the smell of hay and sweat. His broad shoulders, once a symbol of strength and certainty, now trembled slightly as he stared at the woman sitting on a bale of straw in front of him. Her name was Clara. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to be anything more than a mail-order bride who'd arrived weeks earlier, quiet, withdrawn, and clearly carrying more pain than she dared to speak of. But that night something had shifted. Earlier that evening, a wild stallion had thrown her off in the corral. Luke had found her struggling to breathe, her dress torn and dust coating her face. He'd carried her into the barn, laid her gently on a blanket, and fetched warm water and bandages. Clara didn't cry. She just sat there trembling, clutching at her sleeve as if it was her last line of defense against the world. When Luke reached to tend to the gash on her arm, she whispered, "Don't take it off. Just do it." Her words stopped him cold. There was fear in her eyes, the kind that only came from years of being hurt. Luke froze, his hands hovering in the air. He didn't know whether to ask, to comfort, or to step back. But then something inside him changed. The man who had built fences and buried dreams decided not to walk away this time. He knelt beside her, his voice low and steady. "Clara, you don't have to be afraid here," he said. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you anymore." She turned her head slightly, as if she wanted to believe him but didn't know how. The lantern flame danced in her eyes, revealing tears she'd tried to hide. "I've heard that before," she murmured. Luke's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories about how she'd come west, sold off by a family, desperate to survive, promised to a man twice her age who treated her more like property than a wife. When that man died, she'd been left alone, with nothing but scars no one could see, until she found Luke's advertisement for a ranch hand and companion. Now, in the quiet of the barn, Luke dipped a cloth into the warm water and gently cleaned her wound without lifting her sleeve. His hands were rough from years of work, but his touch was careful, reverent even. He wrapped her arms slowly, not saying another word. Silence filled the air, broken only by the creak of old wood and the distant cry of coyotes. When he finished, he sat back on his heels and said softly, "You're safe now. You hear me? Safe." Something broke inside Clara, her breath hitched. Her eyes closed, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she let herself cry. Not loud, not wild, just quiet. Trembling sobs that seemed to shake the dust right off the rafters. Luke didn't say a thing. He didn't reach out. He just stayed close.
Enough for her to feel that she wasn't alone. Minutes passed before she whispered, "I don't know how to live without looking over my shoulder." Luke swallowed hard. He knew that feeling better than he wanted to admit. After the war, after losing his brother and nearly his soul, he too had built walls so high no one could climb them. Maybe that's why he recognized her pain so easily it mirrored his own. When the crying stopped, Clara wiped her face with the back of her hand and managed a weak smile. "You didn't do what most men would have done," she said. Luke tilted his head. "What's that?" She hesitated before answering. "Take advantage of the moment." The words cut deep. Not because they offended him, but because they revealed the kind of world she'd known. Luke stood and took a step back, giving her space. "You deserve better than that, Clara. You deserve someone who sees you for who you are, not what you've been through." For a moment, the air in the barn felt lighter. Clara looked at him not with fear, but something closer to trust. "Then what do you see?" she asked. Luke looked into her weary eyes and said, "A woman strong enough to survive hell and still hope for heaven." The lantern flickered again, and something unspoken passed between them, a fragile thread of healing that neither dared name. Outside, the wind had died down, replaced by a soft, steady hush. Luke offered her a blanket, and as she wrapped it around herself, he turned to leave. But just before he stepped out, Clara's voice stopped him. Luke turned. Thank you for not taking it off." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes doing the right thing means not doing what's easy." And with that, he walked into the night, leaving her with warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. That night changed everything. For the first time, Clara slept without fear, and Luke, sitting on the porch watching the stars, realized that maybe God hadn't forgotten him after all. Maybe he'd sent Clara not as a burden, but as a reminder that even the most broken souls could find redemption in kindness. Days turned into weeks, and life on the ranch slowly grew brighter. Claire began to laugh again. Luke started humming old tunes he thought he'd forgotten. They worked side by side, mending fences, planting hope one seed at a time. It wasn't a love story written in grand gestures or sweet words. It was written in the quiet choices that heal wounds and rebuild trust. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both knew that night in the barn, when he froze for a second and chose compassion over impulse, that was the moment everything changed. So if you believe that kindness still has power, that doing the right thing can heal even the hardest hearts, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more heart-touching stories like this one. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to be reminded the smallest act of decency can change a life forever.